Yes, late last week it was announced that St. Louis all but was given a MLS team. The only thing we have to do is build a stadium. Not that big of a deal. Stadiums only cost about $200 million. Look in your couch for that money. Michael Highsmith is with us from the Show Me Institute. Good morning, Michael.
Morning, McGraw.
All right, so I had a feeling you guys want to talk about this new MLS stadium.
Well, it's a hot topic right now.
It is a hot topic. Good idea, bad idea. What's going on here?
Well, I mean, first off, I think soccer would definitely be welcome in St. Louis.
Right.
We've got a great culture here for it. But public incentives for a soccer stadium is a whole nother conversation to be having. And what we're looking at right now is just history repeating itself with the Edward Jones Dome. So right now, if you look back, when the Edward Jones Dome was being completed, public subsidies were put towards it, and the Post-Dispatch claimed that it would be an economic boom for the region, and it would cause all sorts of development around it. And here we are, roughly 20 years later, and we don't have a team inside of the dome, and we're $100 million in debt, and there's not a whole lot of economic development taking place around
And
it.
we're still have to pay off the dome.
Right, we're still paying off the dome.
Right, after a massive renovation a couple of years ago. Let's talk about the dome for just a second. Granted, I don't think it was the panacea people thought it would be. However, I'm not so sure you have Washington Avenue without the dome being redone. And the landing with the casinos and the Four Seasons, I'm not so sure you have that without a dome. So it did bring something to the region.
So you could argue that Wash Ave was responsible for the Edward Jones Dome, but you also look at Wash Ave, and there's a couple $100 million worth of TIFs inside of the area.
Right.
So there's a lot of other economic development subsidies that went towards making that happen.
Certainly understandable. And only, 12 games a year? 4 preseason, 8 regular
Right.
season?
That's a huge problem with a lot of sports stadiums, and if you look at the economic research behind it, there's very few things that economists agree on, but the idea that sports stadiums don't spur economic development is one of the few that they can come together on.
It is amazing to me that the fact that economists don't agree on what day of the week it is. And they all agree.
Right.
They all agree that stadiums aren't, if you want a stadium, great, but don't sell it as some type of economic benefit
Right,
for a
and
region.
there's two completely different arguments there. There's the idea, if you want to step up and pay some extra tax dollars for a stadium, that's completely up to you. It's your vote. That's your decision. But if you want to pitch a dome, or if you want to pitch a soccer stadium as an economic argument, it just falls flat on its feet.
Right. But in this instance, they've said, everyone has said, even the development group, the ownership group, as well as the mayor's office have said, hey, if this stadium is going to get through, it's going to have to be a vote of the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the plan is to have it on a ballot in April to vote on this.
Right. So you don't have a problem with that.
No, absolutely not.
Right. And if the vote goes the way it goes, then the people have voted to tax
the people
themselves.
have spoken. But I think in this scenario, it's very important to consider. I mean, we look at St. Louis's tax base right now, and we have aging infrastructure. We have lead inside the waters, inside the public schools, because we don't have the funds to upgrade this equipment. And so if we're voting to divert tax dollars towards a stadium, it might not be the best use of our funds.
There's no question about it. You could take if it's a $200 million deal and you're going to use, $60-70 million to build a new stadium, could that $60 or $70 million be better spent elsewhere?
Right. Actually, the proposal is $80 million
Okay,
right now,
$80 million.
to one-up you.
Right.
But yeah, it really comes down to, is this the best use of these tax dollars, or could they be going towards basic municipal services that are needed?
But you know what? If you were to say, we'll want to tax ourselves to give $80 million in police pensions and new cars and new helmets and guns and cams and everything else, I'm not so sure that would pass, right? To protect police officers.
Right.
But yet, I think it might pass to build a soccer stadium.
Right. I mean, it's important to just look. These are dollars. There's a multitude of things that they can go to. It's not this or nothing. There's plenty of things.
But my point was, though, is that people will be more apt.
People are more apt to vote
for a stadium than vote for, say, the people who make us safe in our beds at night. Yeah. But again, you look at San Diego. That was a convention center tax that just failed to build the new Charger Stadium. But we'll have to wait and see. But collectively, over the last couple of weeks, we've had Centene with a big TIF.
Right.
We've had Ballpark Village with a big TIF. Now you have the MLS with a big TIF.
Keep them coming.
What else? What else am I missing? Is there anything else in there?
I'm sure there's a couple.
There's a couple others in there. But what's interesting is Centene's not going to a vote of the people.
No, the Board of Aldermen just approved that,
Right.
actually.
The Ballpark Village not going to a vote of the people. Yet, however, they're saying that the public must demand a vote of the people for the stadium. So of all the things that are most, if you put in a line the most offensive things at all, this is probably the least offensive because the people get to ultimately vote on it.
Right, that's true. And I mean, this kind of thing, obviously there's a certain efficiency standpoint. You can't have people voting on every single thing. Eventually it would become overburdensome. But with massive projects like this, it's important to have a say on it.
Right, yeah. I mean, it would be like if you had to vote for like 6 constitutional amendments every time you went to the polls. Oh, wait a minute, we just did that. But you know, the argument is you pick and choose. And so after this last Rams debacle, where they tried to rush it through and push it through.
Which actually got a lot of backlash for not going to a public vote.
Right, and not only did it not go to a public vote, they went to court to make sure it didn't go to a public vote after the people voted on this must go to a public vote. Pretty unbelievable and convoluted. So we'll wait and see. We don't even know, though, what this looks like. We don't know if it's a tax, if it's a hotel-motel tax.
The devil's in the details when it comes down to this. It's just we need to be more informed upon what exactly is going to be asked.
Yeah, and it is interesting. Though, you know, to be truth be told, I would love to see a soccer stadium down there.
I'm right there with you.
Right? I mean, I think it'd be, and I don't even like soccer. I don't know anything about soccer. But I think having a soccer stadium next to Union Station would be a blast.
I think it could absolutely be a fun amenity. It could be a great place to spend a night. But it's a matter of how we make it happen.
I know. I still, even though I'm not an economist, and you have to, at some point, believe the experts, but you have to think that a football stadium there or a soccer stadium there would help something around that area, right?
Right. I mean, a huge issue behind these kind of things is the substitution effect. So you have people spending money. Your typical person has a limited entertainment budget. So if you're going to spend $100 to go see a couple soccer games, that's $100 most likely that you're not going to be spending in other areas around the region.
You're not going to go to...
You're not going to go see a movie. You're not going to go out to eat.
You're not going to go to a Cardinal game. You're going to split your Cardinal tickets or your Blues tickets or whatever else. Interesting stuff. More on the website?
Yeah. ShowMeInstitute.org if you want to read more, or you can follow us on Twitter at ShowMe.
ShowMeInstitute.org. Michael Highsmith, our guest. One last question for you. Brenda Talent. She making a trip to Washington these days? Do we know where Brenda Talent is?
I am not sure on that. I can't speak to that.
do you not know, or do you know and you're not allowed to tell us?
I know nothing of it.
You know nothing.
Sorry,
all right,
McGraw.
Good to know. Michael Highsmith. The reason why is because her husband, Jim Talent, who was on the show during the campaign, is now on the short list for Secretary of Defense or something along those lines. So we'll just have to wait and watch and see what happens. Michael, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
8:45 here, Big 5.